Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and joining me for this long-awaited or long-dreaded podcast, the Gene to my Gene, which kind of sounds more like Gene Genie, let yourself go. But actually, it's neither Gene nor Genie, it's Jamie. Hey Jamie, how you doing?
Hey Scott, I heard a rumor we may not be the biggest fans of this season. I don't know.
If only they had even used the phrase, I heard a rumor in this season. I just add that to the list of issues I have with what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as everybody knows, because you wouldn't have clicked play on this podcast if you didn't know ahead of time, we will be discussing the fourth and final season of The Umbrella Academy. Now, The Umbrella Academy is a series that has been covered on this podcast over the years. I think the previous 3 seasons I covered with our podcaster emeritus, not emeritus, but occasional guest star Kimber. We had done Umbrella Academy seasons 1, 2, and I think we split 3 into 2 parts. But this time around, because hey, I never got around to contacting Kimber, to be honest, and I know Jamie was a big fan of the Umbrella Academy. Anyway, we figured we'd keep that going and keep our little thing here going, talking about the Umbrella Academy. Okay. Now, you might have already caught on from what we were just saying, and maybe a bit of a tone you might have noticed if you listened to our previous podcast when we had finished talking about, what was the last show we talked about? Evil. That's right, Evil. So good. So good. Such a good show. And such a good ending. And leaving it open. And now we shift to this.
To this.
Decidedly different. But let me go back in time. Let me remember how season 3 left off. Season 3 left off basically with a reset. Now, I do recall, generally speaking, I kind of enjoyed season 3 a lot. I think I might have liked season 2 a little bit better. I think my co-host at the time, I think he was the reverse of that. I actually did listen to a chunk of that podcast earlier today, which is my one means of any preparation I've done for anything. And I don't think I stated it overly specifically on the podcast. I didn't particularly love the final episode of season 3, but I thought it was fine. And they reset things. And I was like, okay, we have a reset. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when we come back for the 4th season. I don't think we knew at the time it was going to be the final season, but that was determined years ago. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this season was delayed in filming due to COVID, which is so weird when we think about it, because in some ways, obviously COVID is still happening. I mean, I was just talking to someone earlier this evening. They were talking about a coworker who had gotten horribly sick with COVID after traveling overseas. But when you hear about things being delayed from COVID, it keeps going, wow, that was like 2-3 years ago, it seems like now. Well, it was. But they finished filming this season before the writer's strike, unlike some other shows that we've been talking about. So we can't use the writer's strike as an excuse for anything feeling, I don't know, rushed, perhaps, truncated. Maybe some storyline's not really going anywhere, or being like, well, that's all you're going to do with that character. But we pick up with this season, and we are 6 years later. And we're catching up with where everybody, all the members of the gang, what they're doing now. And remember that none of them, at least as far as we know, have their superpowers anymore. So see if I can remember else. And you correct me where I'm wrong. Luther's now a stripper because because now he's got a really great physique and not the weird ape body that he had before. Victor owns and runs a bar somewhere deep in Canada. I don't know if they say it's Vancouver, somewhere pretty far away from everybody else, and that seems to be a very deliberate choice on Victor's part.
Yeah, that was a weird one. That was a choice indeed. Okay.
Allison, still an actress, but she's really kind of doing commercials now. She's not quite the actress of the big star that she was, in the previous timeline. It's never clear to me if she's kind of a fallen star, like she used to be a big deal, but now she's relegated to doing commercials, or that's just the way she is in this timeline. It's
Yeah.
not super important, but they do make a point of trying to trick you to think, oh, she's still kind of like a big deal, you know, what's the word, A-list Hollywood actress celebrity type, and you realize maybe not
Mm,
so much.
not so much.
Um, Klaus, who seems to be kind of hanging out or almost working for her, like keeping an eye on her kid, um, he's cleaned up. He's sober. He's also an incredibly paranoid germaphobe now. So,
Yeah. Bubble wrapped, wearing, terrified of his own shadow, sober, germaphobe.
and always has plenty of crime tape, around to wrap things up in. And let's see, Diego is now a delivery driver, kind of like in the FedEx kind of vein, kind of thing. Can't remember if they specify which. It's probably not a real shipping company he works for anymore. He's not quite in the shape that he used to be. Although they keep making comments about him having put on weight, and I'll be damned if I'm even aware of the fact that he put on any weight every time I would look at him. But they were just joking about when he puts on certain outfits. Allison certainly looks a little bit different, but that might be due to the fact that she was either pregnant or recently pregnant when she filmed, so she looks a little bit different than she did in the previous season, for example. But yeah, Diego's a delivery driver, and he's actually married to Lila with kids. They don't appear to be living a life of domestic bliss exactly. It seems like
No.
the bliss has come and gone, and now it's just domestic. Um, so that's kind of where we are with them. And then we get into a storyline of, it's the Umbrella Academy. So eventually there has to be something that's going to end the world. Because that's just what they do every season. Something's going to end the world. Somehow we're going to find that in some way they're going to be somewhat responsible for it. Because they always seem to be somewhat responsible for it.
Yes.
And they're going to have to try to fix it, undo it, or whatever. And gee, I wonder if they've done a thing where it came down to self-sacrifice. They've never done that at the end of a season. Oh yeah, isn't that what they do at the end of every goddamn season? Anyway, yeah. Wait to hit the same notes, guys. So now, Jamie, we're both fans of the show, and I came into was waiting. I've been waiting for the season to come for a while now. I thought the first season was terrific. It drew me in. I could see what the inspirations were for the Umbrella Academy. I mean, it came from a comic as well, but I know what the inspirations were for that comic, and they all lead to, I always like it all leads to the Doom Patrol. You know that, right, guys? Everything leads to the Doom Patrol. Not the X-Men. It's not the X-Men. They even said it themselves. Doom Patrol. Anyway, just saying. And I adore the second season because, it gets into the time travel thing in just the right way,
Yeah, I would say the second season, I feel, is their personal peak. I know some people really think each season went downhill, but I think two was top notch.
Yeah, I think I prefer the second season over the first season mainly because I think there is some really solid character development throughout season two. Season one always has to do the heavy lifting of introducing characters and everything, of course. So it's always going to be unique in the history of any TV series. But especially when you had characters, I thought like Allison had a great storyline in season two. They really did a lot of nice work with Diego's character in season two, as I recall.
Vanya's entire plot line in season two was interesting and had great follow through.
Right. I mean, everything I just thought things really clicked really well. And even when it went over the top in kind of a nice way. again, I love my own. If I was going to be negative about anything in the very first season, I was like, Vanya basically becoming, Dark Phoenix at the very end of it. It was
Right.
like I kind of saw that one coming a mile away, and I was like, okay, I know where this is going to be. But there's so much else that I loved about the season. It didn't matter. And I thought it was still a fantastic season. Season 2 was a fantastic season. Season 3, the setup with the Sparrows and the Umbrella Academy is really good. I only wish that they had been able to stick around for more of that season when instead of, cutting most of them down at a certain
Yeah.
point earlier on. And like I said, I don't know if I love the way they did the whole, hotel on the edge of nowhere kind of thing. Again, I was listening to the podcast to see how negative I was about it. I wasn't overly negative about it back then, other than maybe commenting that I kind of wish that each of them had fought a different sort of, enemy slash obstacle instead of just being this whole samurai thing. I was like, one should be and it's podcast like, one should be a samurai, one should be a yeti. I don't know where I came up with yeti. One should be, an old fashioned gunslinger type, like out of the Preacher show. I was going on. It just would have been cool to have like all these different ideas instead of just, we're just going to go samurai. Boring.
And a really odd choice given the fact that there was no like why a samurai? Where's the base in this?
Yeah, it was a weird thing. Again, listening to the podcast, Kimber was trying to remember, or was there a reference or something to samurai in earlier seasons that would have made that make sense? And I was like, well, I didn't. If you don't remember it, and
Nope.
I don't have time to Google it, I'm going to
Sure
say
were.
no. So with this season, okay, so we're eventually given a setup of something's going to happen. And there's also a choice being made where they can get their powers back. And, some kind of want to do it. Some certainly don't. Some get tricked into it at some point. Some, mistakenly take it. It's all about that marigold substance, whatever. Marigolds.
New Ben and his snaky ways.
Yeah. And I think is it that they're approached. I'm trying to remember this whole thing now. Are they approached by Cy Grossman early on about finding his daughter, and that's what kind of sends them on their initial mission? Is that?
That's what forces them. Yeah, that's what forces them together initially. Is which is okay, so do we do this for this guy? We're terrible as a team. We're terrible together. I love how they keep having to remind us that like we are just a terrible family when we're together. Nobody gets along with anybody. But they had to make the decision, are we going to do this thing or, go back to living our separate lives? Yeah, I don't. What did you think? What did you think about this? With, first of all, we get to have David Cross, so that's cool. But what did you think this was going to be?
Look,
were you buying into this? Did you
no.
like the idea of this?
Well, obviously, I knew the setup was bullshit, but I think you don't go and get David Cross just to do a part. Just like, oh, my daughter's been missing. Could you go help me find her? I've been looking for her all this time.
Right.
No, that's clear. There's clearly something more going on. I think that was pretty obvious. The only thing, again, and I apologize, it's been a couple weeks since I watched this season. I had no desire to rewatch any of it before we recorded. And I've had other stuff going on, which maybe has made my brain a bit foggier than it should be. So I'm trying to recall now, the consumption of the marigold. Does that happen before or after they've decided to undertake the mission for Cy Grossman?
I can't remember the exact timing. I know that happened when they were at the restaurant together. And as they were in the van together, that's when everything started kicking in. So it was all tied in at the same thing.
Okay. Again, see, this is why that guy's going to give us a bad review on this podcast because I don't remember a basic thing like that.
I watched this
I'm gonna look
second day? Second day it dropped, I think. I watched it. Not a lot of notes on my side either as far as the timeline goes on things. I have a few things, but not timeline.
Okay, I got it all in front of me. All right, everything's good. Everything's fine. Okay. The whole situation was it was the birthday party. They were all getting together for the birthday party for the kid, and Sai sort of kind of takes Victor hostage. That's where they find out about the missing daughter, and the marigold thing happens after that. After that, it does happen after. Okay, I apologize for taking up time with something that anyone listening already knows.
There was certain parts with this birthday party scene though that I really loved. Actually, you know what? See, the episode 1 might have been the best episode in the entire season.
Well, one of the things I didn't mention when we were starting out, when I was trying to run down where everybody is I kind of didn't get to mention Five, because Five is actually a member of the CIA now, which so of all of them, if there's someone who's really doing something that really made sense for that character
Yes.
and was a natural progression of what they were, that isn't simply trying to get away from everybody else or just trying to live an entirely weird or sad or whatever kind of life. It's what Five is doing. It should also be mentioned, since it is a factor later on, that while Five is a member of the CIA, Diego is someone who still has aspirations and dreams of joining the CIA, which we see happen or get played with later on in the season. Yeah. Okay. So whatever. Again, I don't want to get. I mean, you can mention if you want to mention the things in the party. I mean, look, I do like a lot of things in the season and at the party, and there's touching moments and humorous moments. There absolutely are, and I don't want to skip by them. We should definitely mention them.
The birthday party was really great because it had all of the correct emotional tones of kind of what it's like to go to a kid's birthday party when you're a family that's, like y'all kind of are living your own lives and you're all in your own little world, and then you have to like come back together for this birthday party. It's like a weird family thing.
I guess.
But there's this idea of there being certain things where it's like certain things about each other, but then there's this really weird, uncomfortable strangeness that we got, which I don't know. It felt to me, it felt like probably the most realistic part of this entire season was when they came back together initially for this birthday party and how awkward it was.
Yeah, I guess it didn't register as much with me. The only thing that seemed to be significant about it that wasn't just kind of like, oh, that's cute or mildly amusing was the fact that Allison never wanted to go in because she feels and knows that some, if not all of them, blame her for everything. And, because she was the one who made that choice, even though she could also counter, well, if I didn't do what I did, you guys would all be dead. But then it's like, yeah, but if you weren't doing what you were doing all along, we wouldn't have been in that position to begin with. Oh, yeah, so we trumped you, Allison. Bad, bad, bad. So
yes. Also, maybe if you were just nice once in a while, we could have talked about this.
So negative towards Allison all the time, Jamie. Always so negative.
Hey, you know what? Season 2, Allison. Season 1, Allison. A-okay. It's season 3 and 4. Can't handle it.
You know what? I'll give Allison this. At least it feels like she has a character this season. Oh, did I just say that? Yeah, I did. I did say that. Okay, so we're getting bogged down in minutia. We're not even getting to the thrust of the whole damn thing. We're going to end up spending 2 hours talking about something that doesn't deserve more than 20 minutes. Because look, the point is that they think they're going to be on this mission to go find and save this daughter of Cy Grossman. And we find out over the course of the next episode or two that there's some bullshit going on here.
There's some stuff.
For example, when they do encounter this Jennifer person, she doesn't know who Cy Grossman is. That ain't her dad. But we encounter all this other stuff. We encounter everything from an entire town, being a secret militia, trying to destroy them when they look like they're looking for this Jennifer person. We encounter who's set up to be possibly the villains of the season, although it's kind of villain light as far as I'm concerned, and maybe that's what happens when you go comedic and you hire granted, we some of us love them. Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally, who are the great married couple who are hysterical, and we love him from Parks and Recreation. Some people love her from what the hell was that show called?
Will and
Will and
Grace.
Grace. Not a show I actually watched, but I was aware of it. But I've seen the two of them together a number of times, and they're lovely together. And here they play Gene and Gene. Is it Thibodeau? I think it's
Yeah,
Thibodeau.
they weren't really menacing, right? It was entertaining.
No, they're fine. We haven't gotten to my problems yet, but now we're gonna get into one of them. And I'll tell you something. Initially, I like this because once again, we've reset things. So we've created a new timeline for the show. This is not the first time something like that has happened where there's a new timeline on the show,
Mhm.
i.e. the previous season, i.e. what happened as a result of the season before that. You kind of get, it's kind of what they do here, especially when you have one of your main characters, Five, is someone who kind of, farts and trips through time and
Yes.
the different timelines all the time, which they make an odd use of a lot in this season. Now, and I initially was intrigued by the concept of this couple, who are their leader of, it's almost cult like, their followers, where they're talking about, the timeline where they all seem to have these memories of something that had happened before. They all feel like they're out of place, like they're not in the right timeline. Something has happened. Something has changed. Something is wrong. They're not where they're supposed to be. And they keep finding these odd little artifacts and tchotchkes and things that seem to indicate, oh, this isn't from this era, this timeline. This is from somehow it seeped through, it bled through, and they found it. It could be something as simple as a toy based on something that doesn't exist in this timeline, but exists somewhere else. How they know that's what these things are in some cases is questionable, but we go along with it because it's an intriguing idea.
Right.
But here's the problem I now have. And I'm going to say this being someone who has probably said on this podcast more times than he cares to admit, how much I'm a sucker for time travel, how much I'm a sucker for parallel universes and timelines and whatever. And
Yes, so say we all.
And this goes back to, yes, Battlestar Galactica, no, to me, I'll go back to the mirror universe of Star Trek. I'll go back to every other thing I've ever watched that involved time travel. God, the Back to the Future trilogy alone, various books, movies, TV shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Many of them totally based on, even up to present day. Loki is all about that, it's taken over the Marvel cinematic universe, quite frankly. And also DC stuff as well.
Yeah.
You know what? I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of burnt out on it. I've kind of gotten tired of it at this point because the whole idea of doing things that involved alternate timelines and things changing, this one little thing could create an entire different branch and how decisions get made. Oh, the new Star Trek movies were all based on an alternate timeline from just one change. It changes into an entirely different thing. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Now it feels, just God, the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, which has made probably $1 billion already. It's all about that as well, Okay. I hate to be the one to say this because I hate when I hear other people say it. But to a certain degree, when you're playing with a situation where we can do things at different timelines and that can save us, that becomes our safety net. And when something is your safety net, it then also can become a crutch. And I think that's what's happened here. And it's really happened with this show. And there's so many things they could have done with the Umbrella Academy. And this, I was like, oh, okay, is that where it's going to be? All right. I guess we're going to deal with some more timey-wimey stuff and how we're going to undo this. And I was like, all right, maybe they'll make it interesting because they've certainly been very interesting in previous seasons of how they've dealt with that, with the commission and with and all those different characters and everything. But I gotta say, I think they really dropped the ball with this season and how they handle that. Because as far as trying to correct anything timeline wise, I mean, unless I'm forgetting something else, at most it's Five and then Five and Lila, fucking around on a subway that takes into different timelines.
Right.
But that's kind of sort of it as far as that specifically is concerned. And then I'm like, okay, what's the big threat? Because they keep referring to something as coming as the cleanse. All right. Which, when you hear a word like the cleanse, it sounds like you're talking about something like the purge or something's going to happen. Is it going to be some sort of culty thing where is there going to be some mass murders? We don't know what it is initially. And thus becomes one of my other huge problems with this season. And then I'll let you kind of get into stuff as well. What the big thing turns out to be for me is probably the most disappointing of all the things that the big things they've had to deal with at the end of any of the previous seasons. I love the reveals about Ben early on, and we'll talk about that. I'm sure we both want to talk about that. I have no problem with any of that stuff, and we'll get to that later. But what they're ultimately trying to stop and fight, or whatever you want to call it, I found unpleasant and ugly to look at, and kind of uninteresting to watch. And I was going, okay, so basically it's just this creature is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger until it, I don't know, envelops the world or something. And unless they sort of kind of do something very similar to what Reginald was doing with them at the end of the previous season, which is, basically, I think as Kimber put it in season 3, kind of using them as batteries and tapping out their life force with the marigold and everything else. It's sort of kind of what going to end up having to do here as well, is how it's kind of translated, I think. And I was like, oh, so they're repeating that story beat. That's great. Awesome. So, yeah, again, I ran right to the ending there as far as what, look,
It's really okay.
Look, we can talk about things that we like or dislike over the course of the first several episodes. There's not going to be a positive word out of my mouth about the final episode.
No.
The final episode is as bleh a final episode as I've seen especially of a fantasy show. It was just, wait, that's it? That's it? Really? Great. Awesome. I'm glad the only thing that was good about the season is that at least I only had to sit through 6 episodes to get to that. I would have been much more pissed off if I had to sit through like what's the normal number? 10 for the show, I think, or
Yeah,
something?
9 or 10.
Ugh. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I'll let you take over for a bit.
Well, okay. Where I had trouble really getting past just little things in this season is that it felt like there was 4, maybe 5 different plot lines that they were trying to put together or weave through 4 episodes, 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, instead of going, here's the thing. Okay, when you write, you're a writer, you have all these different ideas. You have the different places you want your characters to end up, and then you have maybe many possible ways to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
Your job as a writer is to go through all of those and find what you can use that creates a cohesive line between one character's plot line into another character's plot line. And then the rest needs to be set aside. No matter how much fun you kind of have played with them in your head, they do not serve the purpose to the story. And I feel like this is a prime example. Anybody who goes to school for writing or wants to become a writer, I feel like they could watch this series and then see this final season, and it could be used as an example in 100 different ways. There are a lot of different storylines. The stuff that's going on with Diego and Lila and Five, and Jean, and what else do we got? We've got the Jennifer incident and Ben, and yes, you've got a lot of different characters, but they have successfully, for 3 seasons, given all of the characters their own little plot lines, but they all make sense in partnership with everybody else's. And this season did not have that. It's like, well, we don't know, we don't know what to do with Klaus. So let's throw him in a grave. We don't know what to do with him. Let's just make him have this backstory that we give no meat and potatoes to. Some drug dealer is going to hold him hostage and use him for his powers. But we're just going to keep him back there. That doesn't tie into anybody else's storyline in any meaningful manner at all. You've got Diego and Lila's story itself is a good story. Everyone can relate to that. Anybody who has been married, has kids, that's an American story right there, But then she goes off with Five, and the situation that happens with Five on its own, given an entire season to have ups and downs and work through and weave that storyline into everybody else's, may have been really intriguing. There were definitely moments that were interesting in that storyline, but it didn't make any sense to be there. Everything just felt like, here's all the ideas that we possibly could have come up with over the years, and we don't want to miss our chance to be able to do them. So we're just going to throw them together and do it. And that may not be what they did, but it's certainly what it felt like.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing if I start to run it through my head, I was going to go through each, and you've just knocked them out right there. Excellent. The journeys, because each character has to go on some level of a journey through the course of a season. Where are they now? Where do we want to take them? How are we going to get them there? And that was really executed to a very fascinating degree back in season 2, because they came up with the idea where, we're going to drop them all into different points in time.
Right.
Where they have to figure out life and what they're doing, and then eventually find each other. And even though it is a common thing, we've said, again, it's been repeated on this podcast more times than I care to say at this point, where you take a series and you split characters apart, and a lot of it is how you get them to come together. And, but I thought they did a really great job with that in season 2 of the show.
Yeah. What is season 2? Sorry to interrupt, but season 2, on top of having their core characters, that they were able to give them all these different plot lines. Think about all of the other characters that were in that season as well, but they were still successfully interwoven, because you had Cha-Cha and Agnes and Sissy and Hazel, and just really well-developed characters. Even if they didn't get near as much screen time, they still had something to do there.
Right. So with this season being, it's essentially, okay, we have to save this girl because we think we've been put on a mission by someone who's supposedly her father. And then we discover that's not really true. And then we discover she's part of something much bigger, and we're just trying to figure it out. And then we realize, through Reginald and whatever, that, the one thing you don't want to happen is to have this girl and Ben kind of get together, which is exactly what's happening, and where that can lead. And then we find out the truth behind Ben, which is probably one of the best parts of the series, dramatically speaking, when we discover that. And it's funny because when we had heard Ben referenced in earlier seasons, they always spoke so glowingly of him. So when so when we got to season,
Ben was better.
So when we got to season 3 and we see Ben from the Sparrow timeline, we're like, maybe there's like a parallel universe thing where, he's kind of a scumbag in this and jerk in this universe, unlike our Ben. But we kind of find out that that's not really the truth because Reggie, as he's wont to do, I guess, decided to do a little brainwashy-washy.
That's probably like, isn't that probably one of the best things about this season, like as far as a reveal goes,
Oh,
is this.
when they all keep saying the same thing. When they keep,
Yes, and this idea that like our Ben is a sweetheart, our Ben is a good guy, and our Ben is this. But what we didn't realize is that when we saw Ben go in and save Vanya, it was his redemption arc because original Ben was also a dick. We just didn't know that.
right. Again, and also he was a dick in the just like a normal kid way. He wasn't. I
Right.
didn't think he
Yeah.
was like overly anything because he wouldn't have been
Yeah.
trying to save the girl Jennifer in the first place if he had been. But of course we see that in reality, Reggie actually kills Ben, and which is one of the reasons he wipes the kids' memories so they wouldn't remember. Oh yeah, our fake weird asshole dad,
Newsflash, this guy's an asshole.
killed our brother, and but we're just gonna remember he died tragically, and he was the greatest guy ever. Um, so you're proceeding through the season, and you've got characters and their little stories. Like I said, Luther isn't given much to do. Luther, which is it is what it is. He's had stronger storylines in previous seasons. They've gotten rid of Sloane,
Yep.
so he doesn't have he no longer has the significant other that he had met in season 3. I think we realized that when they had reset the timeline at the end of season 3 that Sloane wasn't there. Uh-oh. Um, but he looks like a normal guy, so you figure he can have a normal life. But because he's a big dunderhead, all he can do is strip anyway. Apparently, there really isn't much going on with him, and then they kind of just parcel him off with Diego at that one point where they just want to. It's funny how okay we just want to do this to keep them busy, and they end up being taken to the
Yes.
CIA and look, it's not that there isn't some mildly amusing stuff that happens there.
Oh yeah, the fight scene there is really fun.
Right, but there was something that kind of I don't know. I don't want to say it stretches incredulity because that doesn't make sense for a show like this. But I kept going. There's something that just doesn't sit right about this with me. I don't know. I just was kind of by it. I was trying to figure out. Wait, are all these CIA agents who are under the guys in charge, Ribbons, who we discover is part of the Keepers conspiracy? Are all of them part of it as well, or are they just following his directions and they don't realize that? And meanwhile, no one, the slow horses of the CIA who are all hanging out there.
It's definitely in the pool of murky water in the storytelling of the season.
But my thing is that to me it was just kind of it wastes my time.
Yes.
It's a bit of a waste. It didn't really have, and it wasn't, and you can waste my time if it's really fucking cool. I don't know how cool that was. Allison really isn't given much to do other than worry about her daughter and Klaus by proxy, because Klaus is kind of like the permanent babysitter for her daughter or something, which always strikes me as weird the whole time. I guess he's kind of like the what is it? Was it au pair? Even though the daughter is old enough, probably doesn't really need it at this point.
Well, I mean, is he really taking care of her, or are they taking care of him?
I think he thinks he's taking care of them when it's the other way around. Yeah, I think that's clear. The whole Klaus storyline makes no sense whatsoever because I don't care that they introduced this dealer that he originally used to get the stuff from. Oh, by the way, the fact that he's like just oh my God, you used the marigold to heal my wound, which means you put something in my system which I didn't want there, which is basically going to start the whole addictive thing, and then he just becomes obsessed with like, oh well, now I have to go get something.
Yeah, that was.
I thought that was
a little leap, right?
I thought that was pushing it.
Yeah.
To a degree, where I was like going.
This is kind of dumb.
And then, okay, if you want to introduce this other character who maybe is the guy he got drugs from but owed money to, oh, okay, I don't care. That's fine. What I didn't get is, okay, the guy realizes that Klaus can come back from the dead. Because he kills him and he comes back from the dead. I didn't see how he would know he could use him as a money-making thing. I didn't see that part. I didn't see it revealed to him that he can talk to and be possessed by the dead with him. I didn't
Yeah.
hear that happen. I didn't see that happen.
Right.
Are we saying and
It
are we saying this
feels
guy knows
really,
that? Because if the guy doesn't seem because didn't Klaus, didn't Klaus have this kind of ability already? He already had the come back from the dead thing.
well, see, that's this,
Because
okay.
he's done that before.
That's his thing, right? But this is what I mean, which is it's like they took every idea of every storyline they could have possibly ever had, and then they just tried to pinch a little bit of it in
Oh,
here.
I know,
If
but
we had a whole season and the whole season's plot line for Klaus was him running into this guy and then this guy discovering that he has a power and then the guy realizing there's a way to take advantage of this,
right, but
none
right,
of that.
there isn't any point to because there's never really a leap to how the guy knows he can make money off
None.
because and again, unless I miss something, all he knows that Klaus can come back from the dead. How does he turn that into Klaus being a medium and being able to communicate with the dead? Because I didn't see the reveal that he
No.
knows that's a real thing that he can do.
Yeah.
And anyway,
It was another one of
that
those
whole
like
thing ate up so much time and didn't do anything for
no,
the progression of the actual story, and it just wasn't that interesting or fun to watch. So like
no.
we take that. So then Vanya is the one sorry, excuse me, Victor. Is all about wanting to go see Reggie and finally have words with him, whatever. But didn't there seem to be kind of like, oh, we're going to hit this note a couple times. I'm now I'm going to get pissed off and I'm going to have to be held back because I'm the one who has like the world crushing power, which doesn't really seem to be utilized all that well this season, if at all. And I was just like, okay, didn't we didn't hit this already with between Reggie and Victor? I felt like wasn't number one, wasn't this kind of the point of season one to begin with? Like,
Yes.
didn't season one entirely revolve around that? Now, I maybe in Victor's mind it wasn't totally settled, or there were still things that had to be said. But did I really feel a feeling of, oh, I got closure on this big, wide open story between these two that had never been resolved? I never felt that was the case to begin with. And again, through the last episode or two, where Victor is trying to keep them from killing Ben, and that Victor will be able to save the day and be able to talk Ben down, when there's no indication
Yeah.
that there's any reason why Victor should think that. It's not like Victor has any kind of special bond with Ben, especially this version of Ben. Why would he think that this could happen? I don't know, but it certainly doesn't work. I don't even know who's left. Oh, 5.
Well, and it's really just to touch on this thing with Victor. What's really frustrating for me is that for 3 seasons, Vanya or Victor was the cause of the apocalypse. Like that's what they said, right? Like, oh, Vanya's the cause again.
Right.
Okay, fine. Why couldn't Victor be the cause again this time? But then this time they walk into it. If you're going to do that anyway, why create this new weird blubbery creature-y thing that doesn't make any sense and then add a giant squid and some confusing storyline and meat and potatoes,
What was the point of having her being found as a child inside a squid to begin with?
No clue. Never figured it out.
Never
figured it
other
out.
than hinting at there was going to be a thing with her with people with things with tentacles.
Yep, that's it.
What was the point of that? I never got the point of that.
Literally, that was never. That story didn't exist or something. I don't know. I don't know.
So
that's what I mean. Like, why couldn't we just have stuck with Victor? Let's stick with Victor. And if we're going to go into the Victor has to have the storyline where Victor finally stands up for himself and, against this terrible adoptive father who's messed with all of their brains. Do we really have to do that again? Because we just did that in the last season.
mm-hmm.
Like Luther figured out the hard way, Klaus figured out the hard way. Everybody figures out the hard way. Why? I don't know. Why are we doing that again?
Why repeating another story beat that's already been beaten to death to begin with? And then you have 5 and the stuff with which would then becomes the stuff with Lila, which you had talked about already. In a different season, in a different context, I really probably would have enjoyed, maybe enjoy is not even the right way to put it. I would have really appreciated um, the whole idea that they now end up spending like several years together,
Right.
and the fact that it is such a long period of time then makes the idea that he would end up falling for her despite the fact that she's his brother's wife at this point, especially because there had been that weird connection between Lila and Five from before,
Yeah, for
with the commission and everything
yeah,
else,
the commission and the handler
and
and
then
all
the
of that.
briefcases and all that other fun stuff. I miss the briefcases. Um, however,
Did it feel like, but you know what, when I was watching it and they were doing all of the subway travel scenes, immediately my brain jumped to Dark Matters and the discussion that we had had about Dark Matters about like two specific episodes where I'm just like, are they gonna step off and continue the story, or are they just gonna keep entering new worlds? it
yeah.
it felt just like that.
And it's funny because it's confined essentially to one episode, but it felt longer, which is weird in a 6 episode season. I think there may be something said for a show with as many, when it's sci-fi, fantasy, comic booky, etc. to begin with, and they usually have all these big ideas and way bigger than life characters. It's really hard to scrunch that down into 6 episodes unless you know. But if you know that going in, then you write to that. You write to that
Yeah.
and you streamline things. And it's like, okay, so that it works. And of course you can do it in 3 episodes. It's all on how because you do things like that in movies, which is only, would be like 2 episodes long. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You had 6 episodes to play with here. And I felt with only 6 episodes, and I remember there's some people who were positive about the season. It's like, oh, the good thing about this season that with only 6 episodes, there's no filler. It's like, really? And I hate the word filler. I hate when
Yeah.
people refer to shows, and because usually all the shows they refer to as filler, I was like, that's a great episode. Shut up. However, I do feel there's a lot of wasted time in this season. And I think it's I came to think by the time I got to the last episode, hey, you know what? It's not just that it was a waste of time. It was a distraction from the fact there really isn't much here to begin with. That's what it came down to.
Yep.
That at least, even if I didn't love the whole hotel thing at the end with season 3, it's still a really good season. And I got where they were going throughout the season. This one I was like going, oh, okay. Wait, so that's it? And but how do they even so it just got frustrating when I realized what the big thing the crisis they were trying to defeat, and then I realized, oh, and the only way to do that is, oh, we just basically have to sacrifice ourselves again. Oh, okay. So it's good things you guys don't have to worry about working together. You just basically have to stand there and be absorbed. That's great TV. That's great. That's great storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, especially considering that we okay, I think most of the people who are a fan of the show that can say season 1, season 2 Ben, their Ben was a very likable character. His little riffraffs that he had with Klaus, as a ghost, the fact that he did save the day for Vanya at one point. There was a lot there. That was a developed character. I think season 3 Ben, he was, he wasn't as lovable, but he was still an interesting person to have on screen. He had funny lines. He was kind of an ass they had to work around and try to pull him in. I get it. But Ben in this season was like, who is this? Who is this person? I don't understand any of this.
I would ask anyone who watched the season, and I said, be honest with yourself, did you really enjoy any of the Ben and Jennifer stuff this season? Really? I mean, a couple of the conversations were okay, but first of all, it's really obviously what they're going to do with the two of them, like almost from the get-go. And I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to be like, they really don't care for each other, which means they actually are going to care for each other. Okay, we've seen that. That's bad.
Right.
That's so-so writing 101. Fine, whatever. We all do it. But and then the whole thing was like, and they don't seem to be aware that whenever they come into contact with each other, or whatever, that most of them become like glowing embers, and it's just like, oh god damn it, I'm really finding this so stupid right now. I just I don't know, man. There.
It didn't give me anything. It didn't give me anything about caring about what's going to happen to Ben. I didn't care about the relationship that he was having with this Jennifer. The fact that the Jennifer incident, even, why did we even have to have a story for the Jennifer incident? I would have been completely at peace my entire life, never been given the backstory on the Jennifer incident.
Um, are we talking about the murder of Ben?
Well, yeah, just the idea that, they would say, it was the Jennifer incident that
Oh,
did it.
see,
I
I like
I
that
didn't
part.
have to have a solve for it. I mean, it's not against having a solve for it, but I didn't need to have it if this was going to be the result.
I don't like all this other stuff, but as far as what I had of what was on my screen that I had when I watched all 6 episodes, that was some of the most interesting stuff I saw in all 6 episodes.
Yeah,
I didn't care for everything that came
came
after
after
it, but as
what it
far as
was.
that I enjoyed the back. You know what that made me do? Maybe like, hey, you know what I would like? I'd like it entire. It's too bad it's the final season. I would just like a backstory, or just let's see them as kids again. We don't need
Yeah,
these actors anymore. Let's run through this again because we never got to experience this. We catch up with these people,
right.
many years later. We
As
we never got to
messed
experience
up
them.
adult.
Yeah, which I know is the point of the show, and that's what makes it kind of, it's in the vein of like, your Doom Patrols and so on and so forth. But and it was funny. I was listening to I told you I'd mentioned a few times I listened to the podcast from the third season, and I noticed one comment I made during that podcast was um how much I wish there had been more Pogo in that season. Because in
Yes.
season 3, we only got the thing where they go to the alternate timeline or whatever the
Yep.
heck it is, and he's like the tattoo
The
artist or
biker
whatever.
tattoo artist.
And I remember commenting about how, but this season, other than that brief moment in the flashback, the Jennifer incident flashback
And the
actually,
narration.
um, between the 2 seasons back to back, I start to realize, you know what? Pogo might have been my fucking favorite character to begin with, and it really sucks that he was pretty much non-existent this season specifically, because that's what we're talking about. I would have loved Pogo more than quite frankly, than spending time with any of these characters this season.
Yes.
I didn't. I wanted to enjoy. I like these characters a lot.
So
I
much.
love the
So
show
much.
so much. There were things that, you know what, the baby shark gag would have been more spot on like 5 years ago or so. But I still
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I still enjoyed
Yep.
it. I found myself singing Baby Shark recently as a result of it. I said, okay, I don't mind them hitting this again. Hitting this again. Again, this should happen in 2019, whatever year it was. But still, it still worked. You know, some of the fighting between Five and Diego when everything else is going to hell around them, and they're still focused on fighting with each other because of the whole Lila thing, and they should both be clearly aware. Hey, the world's like literally on the precipice of ending right now, and you're busy fighting with each other when it's kind of an understandable situation, and Diego does come around on it. He kind of realizes it, but.
Yeah. It's
Man.
it's it it it's really difficult because it's like you said, we really like these characters, like spending time with the characters, even if some of the storylines that we get throughout the seasons are just kind of repeated and updated versions of the last season.
Hmm.
They've always still managed to put enough new and interesting stuff in it that, like I said, would weave itself within the storyline. Uh, that it was fun at the very least. That's, you know what, that I think more than anything is that this show, yeah, it has its moving moments, but more than anything, it's just always fun. And it wasn't, this season just wasn't that much. It
Yeah,
was sad and there was some heartbreaking stuff in it, but it wasn't very fun.
a little bit. I mean, though, I can't. I do recall there was a scene somewhere that I might have gotten a little emotional watching, but you have, even if you put two guns to my head, I'd be damned if I can remember what the scene was at this point. All I just kept going back to was, I don't know how much I enjoyed spending time with any of these characters this season. I mean, Luther's kind of a goof and doesn't do much, and okay, fine, but that his thing. But it was the least interesting Luther of all four seasons.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff with him and the Sparrows was really great that season. The stuff with him when you go back in time with the stuff with the moon, and then the realization of how his dad pretty much just kind of abandoned him there, didn't really care. All that stuff, stuff was great. And
I did enjoy how many times we had Luther in a situation where, for some reason, there were no pants.
Right, and then I don't know if I need to see the Shaggy Leg version though.
No, no.
But I just started going through them. It's like, did I really love any time I spent with Luther this season? No. Did I really love any time I spent with Diego this season? It was, not really. And then I went and realized,
and that really makes me sad because Diego in season 3, I loved him in season 3.
You know, I'm sorry. I mean no offense, but there's nothing. I didn't find any of the time I spent with Victor terribly interesting. I didn't find any of the time I spent with Allison terribly interesting. Klaus is a breakout character on the show, and usually the most fun and just fascinating character when he's being a goofy drunk, or all the stuff with Reggie last season, which was fantastic. Again, we've already hit this point a couple times, much like the show does. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with him? Okay, well, the germaphobe thing was cute, although a little that went a long way. And then everything else is just like, what am I wasting my time with? Great, you found a way to come up with a storyline for Klaus that I have no interest in whatsoever. I actually can we go back to the other stuff? I was watching the screen. Can we go back to the other stuff? And then I was like, okay, then give me more on what the antagonists are, what the threat is, the stuff with the keepers, the Gene and Jean stuff. And, you know, some of that's actually kind of interesting. I did like watching how they interacted with the David Cross character when you realize, okay, there's something more going on here than we realize. And then the big reveal is that the David Cross character is not David Cross at all. And it's actually, Reggie's, I guess, why do we call her wife? I guess
I think she's his wife.
Abigail, who also is of some alien race thing going on, which I found kind of confusing, but I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I guess that is why.
Oh, yeah. See, oh my gosh, look at all this crazy crap that's going on in this season. And this is a show where we literally are like, yeah, they're an alien. Okay, I'll just accept that.
Yeah.
We're so forgiving of it anyway. So the fact that a show where you forgive so many like little trips where it's like, what you guys do? What you guys really do when you sat down and wrote this season? It boggles me.
I just felt so much of it was a blah mess for me. And so even when you're dealing with characters I really like I kind of enjoyed stuff with 5 because with the number of years that have passed, it kind of explains why the actor would look the way he does since he'd been trapped in it. But now that he doesn't have his powers, that body is starting to age slightly.
Yep.
He's actually, so he does look like he's 6 years older because he was,
he is in his 20s now.
So it kind of works for it. But, gosh.
Yeah, I do. I did enjoy a lot of the stuff with 5, but I always do. One, because like you said, of it, his skipping through time, he's always the catalyst to a lot of that. But I also just really enjoy Adrian Gallagher. Like he's a fun person to watch act.
Right.
And it's this silly idea of this being such an old man in such a young person's body who acts like such a young man. And so there was always something interesting there.
Although I have to say that unlike previous seasons, I rarely got the sense that that's an old man in a young man's body the way they kind of hit that in the previous seasons.
Yes.
I mean, there was that fun scene where he encounters all the other versions of himself from all the timeline hopping, and at the diner, and he's got they hit the joke with the pastrami and the coffee and all this and all that stuff. That's kind of cute. Whatever.
But he softened a lot, especially in the episode we got where him and Lila both settled and stayed for the strawberries.
But it's just at the end of the day, I haven't said that in a while. At the end of the day, and that's probably why I'm not it's definitely why there was not going to be any recapping going on in this podcast, and why maybe I haven't zeroed in on that many positive things, because I was so profoundly disappointed by this season, and I'd have to think about the last time. I mean, one can point to other shows that had like disappointing final seasons, or maybe there were issues we had. Some of us had a lot of issues with the final season of Game of Thrones, or some other ones. But this, I didn't get it. I didn't
Yeah.
get why. See, I understood how things on a show like Game of Thrones. It's easy for me to see how things could go wrong there. And again, that's just a matter of opinion. There are people who don't think it went wrong. I'm not, and I'm not debating that anymore. We don't have the time for that. But we did a podcast on that already. I can't imagine anyone debating about this season. The only thing, at best, people say, it was okay.
Yeah.
And from that down.
Yeah.
If anyone
I
thinks it's
think
better than okay, I don't know it yet. Then you can tolerate the crappiest thing possible.
I think everyone I know that is a fan of this show has shared the opinion that I love this show. The last season was all right. That's about the best it's gonna get. It was all right.
I wish I could say it was all right, because the final episode was so bad. It was so
made
bad.
Me sad. It made me so sad. You know how much I was looking forward to this. And then I was like prepped. I did a rewatch of the first 3 seasons, and I like timed it up so like I would be ending it right when the new one was going to drop.
Yeah, I know you did that.
Like I said, you know what? It was fine to sit and watch it while I, ate my dinner, and it really didn't spark any more. I don't know.
There was nothing that resonated about this season for me.
Yeah.
And the
magic wasn't there.
And the fact that you have the ending where they basically sacrifice themselves, and they go back and creates that, maybe we call it another fucking timeline, whatever. But it's that whole Sunday in the park with George kind of vibe where you see all the different people in the park, and if you're paying attention, apparently many characters you've seen from the previous 3 seasons.
Some of them that I just mentioned
are scattered throughout the park, in a much happier guise than from before. And I'm not going to run through them. I have them all written down here. You know what? I'm not going to spend time going through all of them. I'll just say pretty much anyone and everyone that was connected to the commission in one form or another, we see in that park, at some point.
Yep.
And I'll tell you something. I was so with this fucking show in that last episode. I didn't even notice it. It didn't even register with me that, oh, there's the handler over there. Oh, there's Dot. Oh, there's Herb. There's this one. There's that one. Blah. Didn't even notice. Then I just read something like, oh, that was them over there. Okay, that's great. I'm not going back to watch. And you know what I'll tell you something else, and then I'll let you decide if there's anything else you want to say about the show, because I'm already going to be tapping out at this point. They make a decision over the final credits if I'm remembering correctly, where we see, I think it stills and clips and stuff from the previous seasons.
Yes.
Right? All that did for me was remind me of how much more I liked the previous seasons than this one. I remember, I forgot about, it's like, I wish this season had some commission related stuff in it. Or I wish this season had, why didn't you if you're going to bring back that, hey, I would have liked to have seen Hazel. Yeah, I was just, at least Netflix didn't ask me, did you like this show? Would you want? Because if it did after this one, I was like, you know what? No, I did not.
Yeah. And you know what else this season was missing? There was no dance number.
Yeah, there was no dance number. That's true.
And you know what? I know that's not important. In most shows, it wouldn't be. But for some reason, in Umbrella Academy, if you're going to bring back, I Think We're Alone Now, somebody better be dancing.
Right. It didn't even occur to me. God. I don't know what to say. I mean, the last time I think I felt this way about a final season of a show was maybe, I don't know, How I Met Your Mother or something like that, where I was just like, and at least I was able to get this one done in, over the course of 2 nights.
Right.
Had to sit through months and months of How I Met Your Mother. Like,
This
really?
is true.
This whole season's taking place over a weekend, and then oh, she had cancer. What? Oh, what the fuck is this shit? Anyway, so yeah,
Fun
this.
times.
I mean, I'm sorry if people were expecting a more thorough breakdown of these episodes and, me to rave about this or that. I didn't have it in me. I haven't had a good way go. Haven't had a good thing going on in my life as of late anyway. So, but I wanted something that would be a nice respite that would give me some fun, give me some joy.
Right.
And
Yes.
there were, again, Baby Shark was kind of fun. And, I really love the actress who plays Lila. So
So much. I love her.
even if I didn't love the storyline, I do love the scenes. And the story, actually, her storyline is not bad because it's very real and relatable for a character who was anything but that previously. So that was
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But it's funny. Maybe this will be my final point, perhaps. You had mentioned before it felt like they were trying to push everything they could, any idea they had, and throw it up against the wall, see what sticks, and whether things get fully realized or fully thought out or fully fleshed out over the course of such a short number of episodes, and how it works is debatable. And there's a lot of truth there. My feeling is this season is just it, and I've used this phrase for other things recently. I don't remember it. It's missed opportunities. It's missed
So many of them.
opportunities with these characters, and there's so many. I mean, it's goddamn. I could have written this, and it just could have been something. Even with 6 episodes, even if that shouldn't have mattered. It's not the number of episodes. It's what you did with those 6 episodes. And I was like, really? That's it? That's it? That's what you did?
Yeah.
We mentioned, right. I mentioned last week about, great fourth seasons or great final seasons and stuff. Cause we were talking about, Evil ending after 4 seasons. Talk about night and day, man. Talk about night and day as far as a fourth season. And not that show or other shows I mentioned before. This one, I made the joke about it last week, and I'll say it again here. If this is what you were going to do, I would have rather you ended it with the previous season and we never go back to them. I would have been okay. Like, okay, they'll never be. You know what? It sort of kind of is resolved. They came back and they don't have their powers and Reggie's in control. Okay, that's fine. If you ever want to come back and do a movie, guys, for Netflix, be my guest.
Right.
I'd rather that than what we got here. This was not worth my time.
Yeah, I can't agree more. There's even the things where we can say, oh yeah, I kind of liked this little thing here with Five and Lila, but you know what the bigger picture is like, you know what? No. These two grew up in the commission. They could be working together throughout this season to accomplish a goal and not just be lost in a subway the whole season.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you could have you could have either not included that or you could have done something with it. And
yeah, I just, again, there are scattered scenes throughout all 6 especially the first 5 episodes that I like. I'm always going to like the actors involved. I like the characters that have been established even before the season. But I can't get around the fact that I don't think anything that interesting was done with most of them in this season. I can't, and yeah, I don't want to beat the same dead horse that they keep doing. I think I can't really say it any more ways than that. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. Sometimes you look forward to something and you're going to be disappointed. Sometimes there's a lump of coal in our stocking, man.
I am very glad that I did the rewatch when I did before this new season dropped, because it allowed me to rewatch it and really enjoy it. I kind of think that if I were to rewatch it now, there'd be like a little bit of sadness with how much I love the first 3 seasons, knowing that it just goes meh at the end. So I'm glad I got the rewatch in. I would still recommend the show. I would err on the side of
Oh yeah.
caution
Oh
for
yeah.
the final, season. It was disappointing. I don't think it ruined the series, but
No, I'm not okay. I'm not gonna say it's a final season as bad as How I Met Your Mother or as bad as Dexter.
yeah, right.
It's definitely better than that.
You bet.
It's just ultimately what the whole thing comes down to is just kind of look. I think the word that got used that I've used and that weirdly coincidentally in a couple different text chats I've had, other people use the same word. And I've been using this word since I was a kid. And we have a mutual friend who uses the word as well, although he lacks the proper ethnicity for it, as far as I'm concerned. But never has a show been more worthy of the word meh than the final season of The Umbrella Academy. And that is my final word on this because I am not going to say another damn word about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to concur with that thoroughly.
Alrighty then. So let me do a quick wrap up here, and then I'll mention anything as far as future podcasts right after that. If you enjoyed this podcast, that depends. If you didn't like the final, if you didn't like the final season of Umbrella Academy, you probably did. If you really loved it, maybe not so much. Who cares? Anyway, you can hang out on our Facebook page. It's Series TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation about shows like Umbrella Academy or Evil or anything else that is on the TV landscape. You can find us on Instagram. We're there as Serious TV Drama. Perhaps tomorrow to celebrate Labor Day, I will take the great labor and post the last 14 or 15 pictures I've been meaning to post there with links, whatever. I say that, I probably won't. No, I will. I swear, I will. You can also follow us on what we call X Twitter. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. STVD as in Serious TV Drama. Remember I used to say that all the time? Stop saying that. And you found us, so you already know where to find us. But for anyone else, if you want to tell anyone else, we're available on most, if not all, podcast platforms. And if you happen to be on one where you can rate and review us, such as Apple Podcast or iTunes, whatever the hell it's called, feel free to do so. Unless you got something negative to say, then, just contact me directly and we can have a conversation. Makes no sense. Okay. Future of the podcast. It is becoming increasingly difficult for me to get this sucker done, but I don't want to give up on podcasting just yet. I See the Penguin is going to be coming out in a few weeks. I really want to talk about that on the show. I think their premiere episode is going to be on the 19th, which is a Thursday, and then it doesn't come back till the 29th, which is a Sunday, and it'll be on Sundays from that point on through, I want to say November, early November. I just got reminded today. I knew it and then I forgot about it, and then I knew it again today when actually it was one of our listeners actually posted something about it and made me go, "Ooh, the old man is coming back."
Yeah.
Old man. I believe me and Brian podcast about the old man. I think we combined that in For All Mankind in one podcast. I think we called it For Old Mankind or something like that. So witty. Huh. I can't believe we don't have more listeners. That is coming back even sooner, and that will be on Thursdays. I think it comes back on the 12th, if I'm not mistaken. I mentioned it on the Facebook page. It was on the Jay and Jack Facebook, group page, I think, that maybe maybe might combine those into a podcast together. The timing of those shows, because at a certain point, it's going to be one show's on Thursdays, one show's on Sundays. I don't know when recording would be feasible to do them both. I mean, especially if I'm going to be enlisting Brian again. Maybe Fridays if he's available. Maybe if Jamie wants to join us, maybe that as well. Because I cannot record Mondays and Tuesdays. Sunday might be tricky. I know we used to do it Perry Mason, but I'm not always a big fan of trying to record the same night. I feel that's a bit of pressure on me, and I don't need pressure right now. So all I'm going to say is that I hope to do a podcast based on one, if not both of those shows. We're going to have to see how times and schedules work their way out. if it's possible. That's what I'm hoping to do. That's all I see on the immediate podcasting landscape as far as this one is concerned. I still have not gotten back to the Scott Forgot the 80s podcast, which is available in all those places I mentioned before. Actually, I didn't mention any places, but you can find it if you ever want to find it. Look for it. I probably will get back to that eventually. I may just, since I put out the feelers and there wasn't anyone who really wants to talk about either Purple Rain or Flashdance, so maybe I'll do them as a solo podcast for both of them. So it won't be me countering someone else's opinion. It'll just be me giving my opinion. Maybe I'll make them a double feature, do them both in one podcast since it's just going to be me. I haven't decided. But hopefully maybe between now and Halloween, I want to give myself a lot of time here.
There you go.
Which means I'll probably have to make a decision right after they charge me an extra couple $100 to keep the thing going, which I don't have. Great. That's about it. So, okay, Jamie. There, we did the Umbrella Academy.
We did it.
Hope everybody's happy.
Even if it was half-hearted, we can check it off the list.
Was it half-hearted or half-assed? I'm going to say half-hearted. No. Although I was proud, like, hey, I told you I could do a podcast without a single goddamn note. There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. I lie. On a Post-it, I wrote, I miss Pogo, Costa VFX, just a cameo in Ben Death flashback. So that was the one note I wrote. That's it.
It was a good note.
Yeah, great note. Basically me repeating something I said from the previous season. I want more Pogo. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this odd little Labor Day weekend podcast that we've pulled together here.
Of course. I wish that we didn't have more love for this season, but it was still good to talk about it. And it's not very often you and I get to both kind of complain about the same things. So there's that.
That is true. It's rare that we both can soak ourselves in the beautiful negativity of
come on in, the water's fine.
It's just like, really? That's all it was? Thanks, guys. Because now when you see people who are complaining about the fourth season of The Boys, be like, wait, did you see the fourth season of Umbrella Academy? Fourth season of Boys, it was like Emmy Award, Peabody Award winning top-notch stuff compared to that. Anyway, I'm just saying. All right. With all that said, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you guys for listening. And I will say goodnight, and I will let Jamie say the final goodnight.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.